Imagine waking up, and the first thing you see is a message carved into the stone wall, left by someone who sat in this exact same spot 400 years ago and never walked out. This isn't a ghost story. This is the Tower of London. And what I'm about to show you isn't just history. It's a blueprint, a cold, calculated machine designed by a king to make sure that no matter how powerful you were, no matter how many armies you commanded, you could be erased. Quietly, patiently, permanently. And the most terrifying part, it worked. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to see this place completely differently. April 1536. The Thames runs slow and grey. Covered barge cuts through the water, moving fast, moving quietly. Inside, a prisoner. He doesn't know exactly what's coming, but he knows enough, because everyone in England knows what it means when a barge heads toward the southeastern corner of that fortress. And then he sees it, the iron portcullis rising from the water, green with algae, slick with river water, teeth of stone and iron that have swallowed hundreds of men before him. Traitor's Gate. But here's what most people don't realize about this entrance. It wasn't just a door, it was a statement. While every other gate in London faced the streets, where crowds could gather, where people could protest, where riots could form, Traitor's Gate faced the river. No crowds, no witnesses. You arrived in silence, and you disappeared the same way. The architecture itself was the message. There is no audience for what happens to you here. The portcullis drops behind the barge. That quiet metallic click, that's not a lock turning. That's a life changing. The prisoner steps out onto the wharf, and what he sees next stops him completely. He expected a dungeon, dark, silent, underground. Instead, he's standing in a city, 18 acres of controlled chaos. To his left, a blacksmith's hammer ringing against iron. To his right, the smell of fresh bread from the royal ovens. In the courtyard, silver coins are being stamped at the Royal Mint. Guards walk their routes. Servants carry water. A raven picks at something in the dust. And this is the genius that most history books completely miss. The Tower of London was never just a prison. It was three fortresses nested inside each other. Outer wall, inner wall, the White Tower at the center, each one operating independently. You could be minting England's currency in the outer ward, while a man counted his final hours in the inner sanctum, and the baker carrying flour past the gate would never even know. Lions paced in their cages in the royal menagerie, exotic animals, gifts from foreign kings, roaring into the London night. 200 yards from where condemned men lay in the dark, unable to sleep. The tower didn't separate terror from normalcy. It integrated them. It made fear invisible. And that's what made it so effective. But none of that prepared him for what stood at the center. 90 feet. That's how tall the White Tower stands. But the number doesn't capture it. Because when you're standing at its base, as a medieval Londoner, Anglo-Saxon conquered, you don't see a building. You see a fist of pale stone thrust into the sky. William the Conqueror didn't build this tower to protect London. Built it to crush it. Construction started in 1078, just 12 years after the Battle of Hastings, 12 years after he took this country by force, and every single dimension of this building was designed to say the same thing: you lost, and we will never let you forget it. The walls are 15 feet thick at the base, solid Kentish ragstone, the same stone used in the abbeys of Normandy, shipped across the Channel. Colonization in architecture, almost no windows at ground level, no doors weak enough for a ram, no decorative carvings, no welcoming archways, just stone, just weight, just the blunt, immovable fact of power. From every corner of the city, from every alley and market and bridge, you could look up and see it. And every time you did, you remembered. But here's what people don't know about the White Tower. Its real power wasn't its walls. It wasn't its height, it was what it did to the mind of every nobleman in England who was not inside it. Think about the arithmetic for a second. Between 1100 and 1600, 5 centuries, the Tower of London held prisoners continuously. Some stayed weeks, some stayed years, some, like the princes in the tower, were never seen again. But here's the number that actually matters. For every one prisoner locked inside, 10,000 nobles walked free outside, and every single one of them, every duke, every earl, every advisor who stood close to the king, walked through their lives knowing Traitor's Gate is always there. The cells don't need to be filled to do their work. The threat is the machine. Every bow in the throne room, every carefully chosen word, every alliance made and broken in the shadows of the court, all of it shaped, silently, constantly, by the knowledge that royal favor can vanish in a single afternoon, and the tower is always ready. This is what historians call a system of passive power. No torture required, no public execution, just permanence. The stones were there before your grandfather was born. They'll be there after your grandchildren are gone, and the king knows it, which means you know it too. But the prisoner is about to discover something even darker, something carved into the walls of his cell that will stay with him for the rest of his life. The door closes, not with a dramatic clang, with a quiet, practiced click, the sound of a mechanism that has locked hundreds of men before him and will lock hundreds after. The cell is 12 feet by 8, unbarred window, stone floor, wooden bed frame, a bucket in the corner, and the walls are covered, not in paint, not in drawings, in messages. Family crest, carved with extraordinary precision, the kind of detail that takes months, a line of Latin scripture, every letter perfectly formed, cut with a nail or a coin or a splinter of wood. A calendar on the opposite wall, columns of marks, days counted. These aren't decorations, these are screams, silent screams, cut into stone by men who knew that if they stopped, they sat still and let the silence win, they would dissolve, because this was the real torture the tower reserved for its highest status prisoners. Not the rack, not pain, time. These were men who had commanded armies, who had shaped the laws of England, who had sat in rooms where history was decided, and now they had nothing, no purpose, no power, no identity beyond 4 stone walls and the slow passage of hours. Every carved rose on those walls is an act of survival. Every inscribed prayer is a man refusing to disappear. But here's the cruelest part. Tower knew exactly what it was doing. While prisoners carved their crests into the walls, they weren't plotting escape. While they counted days, they were surrendering. The machine didn't need to break them violently. It just had to wait. And the stones are very, very patient. Dawn. The bell in the chapel of St. Peter at Vincula tolls 6 times. The sound moves through stone, through iron bars, through the grey morning air, and into the cell. Another day begins. Think about this for a moment. The Tower of London has been standing since 1078, nearly 1,000 years. Monarchs died. Dynasties collapsed, empires rose and fell. Henry VIII built it higher. Cromwell threatened to tear it down. The Victorians turned it into a tourist site. The stones didn't care. Same portcullis that dropped behind a Norman rebel in 1100 dropped behind a Tudor nobleman in 1536. The same cells, the same bells, the same silence. This is the tower's ultimate power, and this is what makes it terrifying even now. It was never about the individual prisoner. It was about the system. A system so well designed, so self-sustaining, that it required almost nothing to operate. Wells for water, storehouses for grain, an armory stocked and ready. The tower could survive a siege from the outside, while simultaneously running a royal mint, housing a zoo, and imprisoning a duke. This isn't a building, this is a machine built to convert royal power into permanent control. It ran, without interruption, for 5 centuries. But there's one more detail, one thing that once you know it, you cannot unsee. Today, tourists walk through those same gates, cameras clicking at the medieval walls, children staring at the crown jewels in their glass cases, yeoman warders in their red uniforms telling clean, structured stories. But the stones remember something different. They remember the scrape of desperate fingernails carving words that would outlive their makers. They remember the sound of oars in the dark and the portcullis descending. They remember that power, at its most efficient, needs no drama, no spectacle, no cruelty for its own sake. It just needs to be inevitable. William the Conqueror understood this 900 years ago. You don't crush rebellion with violence alone. You crush it with architecture. You build something so permanent, so undeniable, so woven into the landscape of daily life that people begin to police themselves. They choose their words carefully. They bow a little lower. They remember every single time they look up at that pale stone tower rising over the Thames, that walls can be a prison even before you're inside them. The prisoner stands at his barred window, watching the light touch the white tower. Somewhere in the fortress, a key turns. A guard changes shifts. The machine performs its function. Patient, precise. The portcullis may be raised today for tourists, but the stones remember how to close it. I've been studying the past to understand the present, and what I keep finding is this. The most powerful systems in history don't announce themselves. They don't shout. They don't threaten you every day. They just exist. Patient, permanent, waiting. The Tower of London was never just a place. It was a message, written in a language that didn't need words. Rebellion is temporary. Consequences are architecture. Here's what I want to ask you. If the Tower of London were built today, not in stone, but in systems, in data, in surveillance, would we even recognize it? Would we see the portcullis before it closed behind us? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one, and if this made you think, share it with one person who needs to hear it. Because the past is speaking. The question is, are we listening?